The first time I heard the words, they hit me like a slap. I had spent years putting in the work, climbing the corporate ladder, staying late, going above and beyond, all in the hopes of finally earning the promotion that was rightfully mine. And when the moment came, when I thought the stars were aligned, when I thought I had proven myself, he told me I wasn't ready. John, my boss, leaned back in his chair and gave me that smile. The smile that always seemed to carry that subtle, hidden meaning. The one that told you he knew something you didn't. That smile that always felt like it was meant to put you in your place. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth, like a politician preparing for a speech. "You've done some great work, Tina. Your numbers are impressive, really, but you're just not quite ready for the promotion." It was one of those moments where everything around me seemed to stop. Time slowed down. The words rang in my ears, and I could feel my stomach churn. I had been preparing for this conversation for weeks, maybe even months. I had run through every possible scenario in my head, but none of them ever included this. "Not ready?" I asked, my voice a little too tight, a little too controlled. "I've been leading teams, I've been managing projects, I've increased revenue by 30%, and you're telling me I'm not ready?" John's expression remained unchanged. He didn't even blink. "You're doing great, but we need someone who's a little more polished, a little more strategic. You've still got a lot to prove. We're going to wait until next quarter to revisit the conversation, but for now, no promotion." I felt the weight of his words press down on me, squeezing the air out of my lungs. I tried to keep my composure, but inside, something snapped. I had put in the work, I had earned it. And yet, here I was, being told I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the promotion that I had earned, that I had worked for, that I had proven I could handle. "Okay," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I understand." I stood up, turned to leave the room, but something in me wouldn't let it go. I walked back to my desk, my hands trembling, my mind racing. I tried to focus on the work in front of me, but all I could think about was that meeting. John's words kept echoing in my head. "You're not ready?" Hours passed. My work became a blur. But as the day wore on, I started to notice something. The numbers, the data, the opportunity. I'd been managing a massive project, a $100 million deal with a client that could change everything for the company. It was a deal that I had put together. It was my strategy, my execution, my work. But somehow, John had managed to take it and give it to someone else. Someone who didn't deserve it, someone who wasn't ready. Jason. Jason had been John's golden boy for months. He had a way with words, a way with numbers. He could sell anything, but he couldn't deliver. He didn't understand the system the way I did. He didn't know the ins and outs. But he was polished. He was strategic. So when the $100 million deal came up, Jason was the one who got the lead, not me. I had been passed over. Again, I walked by John's office a few hours later and saw him in deep conversation with Jason. They were both smiling, laughing, nodding. Everything about that moment felt wrong. My stomach tightened. I wasn't just passed over, I was being erased. I kept working, keeping my head down. I couldn't let my frustration show. I had to focus, but the longer I sat there, the angrier I became. John didn't think I was ready. Jason was going to screw this up, just like he always did. And when he did, I would be there, ready to take control. Ready to prove that I was more than ready. The next few days passed slowly. Jason was handling the client, but it was clear to me that he had no idea what he was doing. The meetings were awkward, the strategy wasn't aligning, and the client wasn't happy. They were asking questions Jason couldn't answer. They were asking for things that I had anticipated months ago, but John and Jason couldn't see it. They were too wrapped up in their own egos. I knew the deal would fail. I knew it deep down. But I wasn't going to sit back and let it happen. Not this time. I had a plan. I spent the next few days working in secret. I knew every part of the deal, every number, every possibility. I had built the strategy that was going to win this client over. I knew the pitfalls, the things they would try to hide, the things they didn't even know they needed. I worked late into the night, redoing everything Jason had messed up, making sure that every detail was perfect. And when it was ready, I presented it to the CEO, bypassing John completely. "Here's the updated strategy for the $100 million deal," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is the one that will get us the deal. Jason's plan isn't going to work, but this one will. The CEO looked at the proposal, then at me. "This is solid," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'll pass it on to the board." Within hours, I was in the boardroom. It wasn't a meeting I was supposed to be in. Jason was the one leading the charge, but the board needed to see the real numbers. They needed to see the strategy that would actually win them the deal. And that strategy was mine. It was always mine. As I sat there in the boardroom, Jason's presentation unfolding on the screen, I could see the cracks. The data didn't add up. The timelines didn't make sense. And the numbers were already showing signs of failure. Could feel the tension in the room as the board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. And then, just as I knew what happened, the client pulled out. They couldn't trust Jason's numbers. They couldn't trust the strategy that had been presented to them. The deal was dead. Jason had lost the $100 million opportunity. The room fell silent. Jason looked like he had been hit with a ton of bricks. His face went pale, and I could see the panic in his eyes. He knew he had failed, and I knew I had one. Later that day, John called me into his office. He looked defeated. "I don't know what happened," he said, rubbing his temples. "The deal was in our hands, and now it's gone. We lost a $100 million opportunity because of Jason's errors." I said nothing. I just stood there, watching as the weight of his failure sank in. This was the moment I had been waiting for. "It wasn't Jason's errors," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It was the errors of someone who wasn't ready." John's gaze flickered. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words never came. He knew. He knew what had happened. He knew I had been right all along. "I need to reassign some responsibilities," John said finally, "and we'll need to discuss your role moving forward. This company can't afford to lose another deal like this." I walked out of that office, but the smile I wore wasn't for John. It wasn't for anyone else in the company. It was for me. Because I knew that I had proven exactly what I had set out to prove. I was ready. And now, it was clear to everyone. Even John. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The fallout from the deal failure was swift and brutal. People lost their jobs. Jason was reassigned, and John started to backtrack, trying to salvage what was left. But for me, it was a quiet victory. The client that Jason had lost had already been won back by me. I wasn't the one who had messed up. I wasn't the one who had failed. I had been the one who had seen the bigger picture all along. And when the promotion came, it wasn't just a victory, it was a redemption. I had earned it not because John gave it to me, but because I had taken it. I had proven myself, not through words, but through results. As I walked into that new office, the one I had dreamed of for so long, I didn't feel a sense of triumph. I didn't feel smug or vindictive. What I felt was something deeper. It was the satisfaction of knowing that the hard work, the quiet persistence, had paid off. And as for John, well, he lost a $100 million opportunity because of his refusal to see the truth. But me, I got everything I had earned. And nothing could take that away from me.